Hello everyone, how are you doing today? I trust you're having a very wonderful day. Today we're looking more into our cybersecurity analysis course series. We're talking about the distributions in Linux. So we'll look at Linux distros, looking at Linux kernel features. We're looking at how the distros work and the different types of distros. So let's start from the very base level. We're looking at generally what a Linux operating system is. We've talked about Linux before in the last class, so you could still go to the last class too, and you should still follow this before you do today's class. Just go up with the last classes so that you can be able to have a full grasp of what we are discussing today. So when we talked about operating system, we said operating system is more like an interface between the user and the hardware. That is the one that you don't see, but you are operating, as a user, you're talking to the hardware, but there's someone in between. Let's imagine there's someone in between the user and the hardware, and that is the operating system. Now we've talked about different kind of operating system. We've talked about Linux. We've talked about there's Windows, there's Mac OS, and for mobiles there are different Android and all of that. But Linux now is very important, like we said in the last class, because Linux is used by over 600 of the super computers in the world, and because it is free and open source. We talked about open source also in the last class. It is very customizable, and people can use it all over. For security, is the most used operating system for security. So Linux, in my own definition here, I would say Linux is a family of operating system that is based on the Linux kernel. What do we mean by that? So if we want to give a very fitting definition to Linux, what we'll say is Linux is more of a family of operating system that is based on the Linux kernel. So let me explain it this way. Now, the Linux is very customizable. Remember, it's very customizable because unlike other operating system, this is open source. And we've explained what open source is. I've said open source. Now, we have the features of the core, and the features of the app is open for anyone to customize. So it open source is more like a collaboration on the source code. So we have different developers come up and work on it openly, and you are able to updates are also done openly. So it means anyone can take it and actually modify it. Anyone can be able to use it, and it is free for everyone to use. Now, because of it is free, we have different versions of Linux. That's what we call the distribution. So we have different versions of Linux. We call them distributions. They can be also called distros or flavors, depending on how you want to name it. But a distribution is more like a different version of Linux that was modified from the original version. So once the original version was created, different people created different versions because it is free and it's under the GNU license. Remember, the GNU license is a license that gives you ability to be able to distribute it freely, modify it, and resell it. You can modify it and resell it. It's just like when we talk about WordPress now. WordPress is open source and has GNU license. Anybody can go into the WordPress code, create a new plugin. You can create a new plugin, you can create a new theme, because it's open source. Anyone can be able to modify it. Anyone can be able to use the core to be able to create anything. That is how Linux is. So if you ever use WordPress, you'll be able to have a basic understanding of how Linux works. So with Linux, the core of Linux itself, the kernel is the core of Linux. It's the one that is the main core of Linux, the Linux kernel. And I'm going to explain more of the Linux kernel in this video. So the Linux kernel now is open source, so anybody can decide to modify it and create something, a new Linux out of the kernel. So Linux operating system relies on that Linux kernel. Since Linux kernel is open source, it therefore means that anyone can use it, modify it, and redistribute it. So we can define Linux this way: the Linux operating system, or Linux, is a family of operating system that is based on the Linux kernel. Like in the last class, I explained that even the mobile Android is still based on the Linux kernel. So what happened was that they used a part of Linux kernel, the Linux kernel, and they now added some other features to it to make it an Android Android operating system. So also, yeah, you can come up tomorrow and create your own operating system using the Linux kernel also. So all you need to do is use the Linux kernel and add other features to it to create your own operating system, and you can distribute it. You can even make it not to be for free. You can put it on maybe like Red Hat open source now, Red Hat OS, which is a Linux OS. It's not free, so you can do it on subscription basis. You can do it on anyhow you like. So, but Linux kernel, the good part of it is that it has a very big community of developers that's always making sure that it is actually ensured that it's safe and is updated regularly. So, like I said, Linux operating system can therefore be called a family of operating system based on the Linux kernel. Any operating system that Linux kernel is used as the core of it can also be called a Linux operating system. So what they will do is that they will have the Linux kernel, then package other libraries and other things to make it a complete operating system. So let's compare it to a car. Remember that if a person takes an engine of a car, the person can take that engine of the car. Imagine that I bring down the engine of a car, and from that engine I can create other types of vehicles. I can use that engine to create maybe a lorry, a van, a bus, a ferry, a plane, a ship. That is how Linux kernel is. So the kernel is the engine that drives the Linux. So the how engine is to a car is how kernel is to Linux. So I can take the engine now and decide to create something new, different types for different purposes. So that's why it is very important to understand the Linux kernel itself, because the Linux kernel that drives every type of distribution of Linux. Remember we said these Linux distributions or Linux distros are different varieties or flavors of Linux, and the flavors are dependent on different it's customizable for the user need, depends on what the user needs. So let's talk about Linux kernel a little bit and the features that it has. Like I said, Linux kernel, just look at the kernel, like the word kernel, palm kernel. So what do you mean by a palm kernel? So like a palm inside a kernel. So a kernel really is more like a seed inside an hard shell, just like a palm kernel, a seed inside an hard shell. So what we say it exists within the operating system. It's inside the operating system and controls all of the major functions of the hardware. So it is very important. It's the one that controls all of the major functions of the hardware. So whether it is a phone, a laptop server, or any kind of computer, the Linux kernel controls all of the major functions. It allows interaction between the operating system and the hardware. So the Linux kernel is very, very important. So applications that interact with the kernel through a system called the interface. That will be the SCI. So Linux sits between the hardware and user processes. That's where it sits. So what are the major features of the kernel? Number one, memory management. So it helps to keep track of how much memory is being used and where the memory is being used. So it's very important. Number two is process management. It helps to determine it determines which processes can use the CPU and when and how long it can use the CPU. So it is in charge of process management. It's also in charge of device drivers, and it provides necessary software for interacting with the hardware devices. That's why I've mentioned three now. And the last one, security also. It helps to prevent conflicts between important processes and limit damage caused by malicious software. So let's look at four of them all over again. Memory management helps to manage memory. Process management, it helps to determine which process is used by the CPU. Device drivers, it provides necessary software interacting with the hardware devices. And security, it helps to prevent conflict between important processes and limit the damage caused by malicious software. So we've talked about four important features of the Linux kernel. Remember, the kernel is the core. The kernel is the main engine that drives the operating system, the Linux operating system. So it sits between the hardware and the user processes, and the kernel is very important. So like we said earlier, kernel is the one that drives. So you can take the kernel and create any different kind of vehicle, just like an engine to create any kind of vehicle. But remember, the vehicles you are creating are for different purposes. Some people need a sport car, so you can create the engine to create a sport car. Someone just needs a sport car. Someone needs a bus because he wants to transport a lot of people to school. So he wants a bus, or he wants to use it for public transportation. Someone say he needs a lorry because he needs more people to be inside. So different people have different needs, and that's what you are creating the operating system for. So all of the different distribution of operating systems that are under Linux are for different needs. Some might just need something fancy, some might need something very bare and simple, some might need something very classy, some might even need something like an aeroplane that wants to fly in the sky. So that's how it is. So that's why different operating systems are for different purposes. Kernel allows processes and servers to communicate with each other very easily through what they call the IPC, inter-process communication. What are the main types of distributions that we have? We have the popular ones, Red Hat Enterprise Linux or the CentOS. So there are over 600 distributions. So but what happens is there are what they call the parent distribution. So a parent is more like, this is a family. So from there, other distributions can come up. Just like we have the Debian family now. Debian is a parent distribution. Under the Debian, we can have Ubuntu, we can have Kali Linux. They are very popular. So if I now go to Ubuntu now and create a new, I can use Ubuntu and create a different operating system under Ubuntu. So Ubuntu will now be like a family, a parent for it. So different operating systems can be created from different parents. Just be creating, the more they create, depending on each user needs. So we have Red Hat or Enterprise is more of a parent distribution. Slackware is more of a parent distribution. Debian is more of a parent distribution. But we still have a whole lot of operating systems that are under Linux. We have Fedora operating system, very popular. We have SUSE, very popular. Different other types of operating systems are also very popular. But we want to talk more on Ubuntu Kali, which is Debian based and that are more used today. So let's start with Kali Linux. Kali Linux is the trademark of offensive security and is also from Debian family. It's open source distribution and is made specifically for penetration testing and forensics in mind. So the essence of Kali Linux is for penetration testing. So if you are into the offensive side of security, you are into maybe penetration testing, then Kali Linux is something you must be very familiar with. Remember, in security, there's the offensive part, there's the defensive part. So the defensive part, you're talking about the SOC analyst, SOC analyst, or even the cybersecurity analyst. It's more of the defensive part. Then the offensive is the penetration testing and all of that. So in penetration testing, the key tools that why Kali Linux is very important for penetration testing, because it comes with some pre-installed tools. What makes different distributions is the kind of installed tools that are in them, installed applications. So that's what makes it different. So some come with some specific tools, some come with other tools. Like Kali Linux comes with some specific offensive tools. For example, Metasploit. Metasploit is used to conduct exploit and vulnerability. So when we talk about penetration testing, we're talking about you trying to attack a system in a simulated environment, an environment that looks like a physical environment. But always remember that if you want to use Kali Linux must be used in a virtual machine. And why is that? Because of the damage that it can cause in case you didn't do it properly. Remember, you are trying to attack a system. So if, for example, you went wrong, it can destroy the system. So it's good to put it in a virtual machine. We've talked about virtual machine before. So if you put it in a virtual machine, you know that that environment is isolated. It cannot jump into a different environment. So it's always good to put, and if you don't understand virtual machines, go to our video on virtual machines to really have a better understanding of virtual machines. Then we have Bob Suite. Bob Suite is more for testing for weaknesses in web applications. So that is also coming pre-installed in Kali Linux. You have John the Ripper. John the Ripper is for guessing passwords. All of these three offensive tools come as a package installed in Kali Linux. That's why Kali is very important for offensive security. Then for digital forensics too, this is when you're collecting and analyzing data to determine what happened to after an attack. So when an attack happens, as a cybersecurity analyst also, you should be able to analyze what really went wrong. And this is where you can talk about digital forensics. We are doing a forensic to know what went wrong. To collect and analyze data of what went wrong, we can use some pre-installed tools on Kali Linux. Example is the TCP dump. The TCP dump is used the command line packet analyzer. We have the Wireshark. Wireshark is very used today to analyze and capture traffic, network traffic. And we'll look at Wireshark, and as an example, we test it also in other videos to be able to see how it works. You're going to use that as an example. Then Autopsy is also analyze hard drives and smartphones also. So to capture traffic and analyze traffic, we can use some of the digital forensic tools. So that is why Kali Linux is very important in security, because you can use it for offensive, to be able to attack a system in a simulated environment, to do penetration testing, web penetration testing, to guess passwords, and also to analyze what happened to the traffic. If you want to see how you are attacked, you can analyze the traffic with Wireshark, with TCP dump, and with Autopsy. Another very important and popular operating system is Ubuntu. So Ubuntu is very popular because it is more used today by a lot of people, and because number one is open source and it's free, and they have multiple editions based on user preferences. They have the desktop version that is for personal computers and laptops. They have the server version that is used for running servers and cloud infrastructure. So when it comes to cloud infrastructure, one of the most used operating system in Linux is Linux operating system is Ubuntu. Ubuntu is used more for cloud computing and others. Then Ubuntu Core is used for iOS or IoT devices and robust devices like that, robots. We also have the Ubuntu Studio. This is for creative people that want to do more of audio editing, video production, and graphic designs. We have Ubuntu Mate. It's a traditional desktop environment for users who want to perform more of classic look and feel. The characteristic of Ubuntu is it is community driven. They have a lot of people in their community that is committed to the project. Then in terms of security and scalability, Ubuntu is verified. So one of the reasons people choose Linux is because of the security. It is very difficult for a Linux operating system to be hacked, because the way Linux Core was developed with security in mind also. So it's difficult for anyone to be able to hack the Ubuntu or Linux operating system in general. So let's just look at more Linux distributions before we call it a day. In Linux distribution, we have the Arch OS, we have the Fedora Linux or Fedora OS. Like I said, we have SUSE OS. We also have the Linux Mint. We have the Manjaro Linux. Then we have the Alma Linux. Yeah, these are very popular Linux that are being used today. So you can use any one that you like based on your own preferences and all of that. But in terms of offensive, Kali Linux is number one. Or we have the Parrot OS is also used for offensive. So like we said, Ubuntu, Fedora, Pop OS, Manjaro, Kali, Mint, Alma, Rocky, Ashashi, SUSE. These are very popular OS, and any of them can be used. They are all over 600. So it depends on, you can research and see your own specific needs, your own customizable needs, and use the OS for yourself. So that's the much we will take on today's class on Linux distributions. Join me for next class as we move more into Linux. Thank you.